What up, what up, what up? It's your boys with the Fair Enough Podcast. We back after a pretty long hiatus. Everyone went on vacation and did stuff. So we took about solid 2 weeks off. I'll be posting our rankings updated on Twitter in the next couple of days with tight ends. We just went ahead and skipped tight ends because the rankings episodes were getting long and drawn out. And so we decided just to post those as an Excel sheet. And that's probably honestly better, anyways, because that's how most people want to look at them. So, how you boys doing today? What's going on?
Oh, doing
Doing
good.
good, doing good.
Sweet. So today we're gonna get into some preseason, just like what are we looking for? What position battles are going on right now? Some things we're looking forward to and looking into the preseason. Everything starts on Thursday, the first real games. I know the Hall of Fame game was like a week or so ago, but that game, no one ever plays anybody. It's just kind of like a spectacle. I actually didn't watch it this year because every year I'm like, I'm going to watch football. It's back. And then I watch the Hall of Fame game and it's like, this is not even football. Like, these guys are so bad. And they're
Yeah,
still like on NFL teams, so they're not bad. But boy, it just gets me all hyped up. And then it's such a letdown. So I didn't put myself through it this year.
yeah. I don't know if I watched hardly any of that, honestly. I tuned in for just I wanted to see the kickoff at the beginning. Was my main thing.
Yeah. That's gonna be an interesting part of preseason to see if teams actually play like their ones on special teams just because they're doing something they've never done before. But
Yeah,
we
exactly.
shall see. That is honestly like just so entertaining for no reason that we get something new as a part of football. The NFL's so smart. Like now everyone's like, oh, I got to watch the preseason to see the kickoffs, and it's like, okay, like
Yes.
that's such.
Well, I mean, if you get more touchdowns, I mean, it's going to be electric. I mean, I just don't know if it will.
It's definitely going to be more. I mean, there's going to be a higher chance of touchdowns. I don't know if we'll see like a ton, but you'll have to make sure and look in all your fantasy leagues to see if your league rewards return points because when you're drafting, that could be a huge difference by the end of it. So,
We
not a
don't
lot
have
of
any.
leagues do, but some of them do. We don't
We
have
don't
any
have
now. I think I have one that we're not together in that I have it, but that's it. I think it's just Kate's family league does return yards, so and they don't even like think about it. So that could be an advantage that I get to use.
There
Sneak
you go.
Cordero Patterson in at the end of that draft. So, but all right, so we're gonna just kind of talk about a couple things we're looking forward to, and then some as we go through the games, just kind of some position battles for the teams that could be interesting that are obviously already being talked about a little bit, but just where we come down on those, who we think we should, who we think should win, who we want to win. As Micah said, we're probably going to be a little biased on certain ones because we have fantasy investments one way or the other. Micah, I love the bottom of your chin. That's just a
well,
great view.
that's really bright, but it also makes it's easier to see. My screen was kind of
It
dark.
looks good. You look like you got one of those like halo lights. Like
Mhm. It's
you're
pretty
going
much
full
it.
influencer.
It's really bright.
I don't know.
Hotels, they
Make
got
sure you get some new Tinder pics after this episode with that light on you.
yeah.
Okay. Got to dial back in. Made myself laugh, and now I can't even think. All right. So the first game, like, it's probably just the easiest place to start because it's two teams that really have a lot going on this preseason, and that's the Panthers and the Patriots. Obviously, the Patriots have their QB battle going on. It doesn't sound like it's much of a battle to this point. Sounds like Drake May's been pretty underwhelming. So I think that, Jacoby Brissett probably gets the start there, even though I don't know that's the best choice for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think Brissett probably gets it. I've heard that Drake May looks really bad so far, but I mean, as a rookie, that's not the worst thing. You know, he's working through those mistakes. I think he'll get better. But I think we're going to see heavy Brissett early on.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and I actually saw one report that said that Milton was actually outperforming uh, May so far in the preseason as well. So that's not a good sign for May. But
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah, sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off.
you're good. But you just never know this early on. I mean, both rookies, you never know what they look like when they get out in game situations. So hopefully both of them get plenty of playing time in the preseason. We can watch a decent amount of both of them. And maybe, I mean, practice is always a little different than a game. So
Yeah. I saw the Milton talk was attached to just a video of him just launching it like 80 yards, which I don't really know why that is ever anything that anybody takes into account. Because, I mean, haven't we learned that just because you can throw it 80 yards doesn't mean that you're going to be good? But I don't know. We'll
Well,
see.
and they said that in practice in Tennessee, Milton always looked phenomenal because the thing he struggles with that you saw on film was reading defenses. And in practice, you're usually running pretty vanilla things because you're not going to sit there and put, especially like the public portion of practice, you think they're going to be running complex defenses and putting stuff on film that teams can come watch. No, they're running cover two, cover one, the most basic defenses that they have. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's pretty easy to do that. But yeah, they'll be fun to watch just because there's Milton, May. You have all their rookie receivers that you'll get to see for the first time. So that'll be kind of a fun game. The NFL knew what they were doing, putting that in that first time slot. And then the Panthers aren't playing Bryce Young, which I think is stupid. I think he showed last year he's definitely got a little bit of a learning curve. But Canales came out and talked about like he's the guy, so he doesn't need to come prove himself. Um, and I think they probably just want to give him a few practices under his belt in that offense before they put him out there in a situation he's not quite ready for.
Hmm. I
The
concur.
Panthers also have wide receiver battles going on. Leggett looks like he's hurt, so he probably won't play. But him and Mingo are kind of battling for a spot there behind Adam Thielen to see who can kind of be their deep threat, their big play guy. And then their running back situation is pretty interesting too because Brooks still isn't fully recovered from that ACL. So Miles Sanders versus Chuba Hubbard, um, that could be one that's not really talked about that matters a lot for fantasy because if Miles Sanders goes back to form, maybe he's somebody you can play this year if their line plays a little better. He's someone that requires a little more blocking and then reading the blocks as opposed to Chuba Hubbard, who's just kind of a sprint guy.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't
Miles.
know what went on there last year with uh, Miles Sanders. He just kind of didn't show up. I mean, me and you were both high on him. I remember us talking like we both drafted him last year in a couple of
I drive
leagues,
him a
or
lot.
traded for him or whatever it was. But we were very high on him going there. We thought he was going to be the guy. He was going to get more touches he did with the Eagles. It just didn't happen. I do believe, like you said, if the line gets better, he'll probably be more productive. But I don't know. I mean, the way that organization is ran. I mean, I know they've got new guys and the new head coach and everything. But Chuba Hubbard just kind of hangs out there enough to not really give Miles Sanders a lot of fantasy value sometimes, and that's what really sucks. So I really hope that, you know, for people that want a good running back out of that team, hopefully Brooks comes back because he would be the guy that's going to be there.
That's the thing too is Miles Sanders. If he just takes back off again, I mean, he's a guy maybe you stock on down low or get him cheap because if he does take off, he could run that backfield, but didn't look likely the way he played last year. That's for sure.
No, no, and that was weird because like he didn't look fantastic in Philly. Like you could tell he was benefiting from a great O line, but he didn't look bad. And last year he looked horrible. I know he had some kind of hip injury coming into the year, and they said it was healed. Maybe it wasn't. You see that a lot with NFL players where they're dealing with a nagging injury, and all of a sudden the next year after they have the full year to get healthy, they're decent again. So you never know, but Panthers have a lot to work on. I'm actually really shocked that they're not playing all their starters, especially Bryce Young, but there's a reason I'm not paid to coach NFL teams, so I'd probably be making the wrong decision regardless of what I did anyways. And then the
Yeah,
other game that's hidden on that night, oh, sorry.
they're paid. They're paid to do that, and they still sometimes make their own decisions. So
I
That's fair.
guarantee you could pay me less money to do the really bad coaching jobs. 1,000%. I do like Canales though, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The other game that Thursday night is the Lions versus the Giants. Basically, the only thing from this game that will provide any value is just seeing if Daniel Jones looks healthy and looks good, and then him combined with Malik Neighbors and just seeing what Malik Neighbors can do. He's someone that's going to be really, really fun to watch. I've seen some highlights so far, and he is going crazy at those combined camps that they have.
Hmm. Yeah, he's a fiery dude. I mean, I saw a video today where he just literally slapped the dude in the helmet just to start a fight. I mean, I'm sure there was some talk in there, but it definitely was. I mean, if you're looking at who instigated it more, it looked like he did. But he looks like he's got the talent to be able to back that up a little bit. I hope that. I mean, hopefully that type of mentality, I guess, doesn't get him in trouble like with anything throughout the year, because that would be the only thing that I think derails him. That or Daniel Jones just not being able to compete at all. I think Daniel Jones actually will be a little bit better than he was last year, and then also because he got hurt. But I think he'll be a little better this year. He's just been trashed on. I feel like anybody who's good enough to be in the NFL, you come back from that a little bit fired and motivated. So
Yeah, a lot of his stock is can Daniel Jones come back to form, play like he did, and I think he'll definitely come back better than he showed to start the season last year. But with that injury, who knows? I mean, he needs to for my stock in him and Malik Neighbors in fantasy, but
yeah,
um, but it just. I mean, he got paid a lot of money and hasn't shown he's worth it yet, and really needs to show up this year or probably not going to be in the NFL much longer, honestly.
yeah. I think they just
Yeah,
botched that.
well, I think they botched the contract. I don't think there's any arguing that. But like, if you look at his receiving core last year and his offensive line, I don't really think anyone's succeeding in that system at all. I mean, their best receiver was probably Wandale Robinson, and he only played like 6 games. So I mean, that's pretty
Yeah,
pretty tough to be successful. And then when you put a bad offensive line on top of that, it's just
yeah. They
not
were
you're
the
not going to do
worst
very
offensive
well.
line. I think I
Yeah.
saw they said today they were the worst, and then they said that he also evaded like at least 15 to 20 sacks, probably.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I don't think Daniel Jones is. I'm not going to put him in the good or elite category anytime soon, but I do also think he's better than he's given credit for. So hopefully he can have a little bit of a bounce back year, if nothing else, just for Micah's fantasy stock, I guess. I don't know. I think I traded him everywhere because I was trying to win in a couple leagues last year that I
Why
had
do we
him,
need
and I
Why do
was
we need to
like,
help out Micah's fantasy stock? He's won that one league 2 times in a row. I think he
That's
can take a year off.
that's the only league I've won, that auction
Well, I haven't won any of them that I've been in with you
league.
guys.
yeah, I
It's
think
gonna
I've
be.
only I've had the best team in that league 2 years running as far as every metric other than the championship. So that's really infuriating, but
I had
whatever.
Hill.
It's
I
fine.
had Hill and Lamb, and they carried my team. And I don't think I can keep them both this year. So I'm gonna have to figure something out.
Expensive.
Yeah, we'll do a whole episode on that league because that one's fun. But anyways, back to the task at hand here. Um, we're just gonna go through some. I'm just gonna switch over and do some of the position battles because I ran into a couple of the games that had nothing that interests me, so I'm not gonna go in order of the games. Um, but I think one of the biggest position battles that you have going on right now is the Bills wide receiver one. You have Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir. None of those guys are really established, so kind of just figuring out who you think is going to win that one. Mike, I'll let you go first. Who do you think's the best wide receiver in that room this year?
Skip me. I got to get to the website I'm looking at. Go ahead.
I think Khalil Shakir will be. I think last year he showed a pretty good rapport with Josh Allen towards the end of the year. He looked like a guy that you could count on. And he was kind of like, he kind of gave like those slot vibes of like a Wes Welker. Like, I mean, like, I'm not saying he's going to be Wes Welker or anything, but he was really dynamic in the slot. I think that's where he's going to tear it up at this year. And I think with Josh Allen scrambling, I think he kind of meets that pretty well with his quickness. I think Keon Coleman's going to be good too, but I just think that with him being a rookie, I think Khalil's got a little head start on him. So that's why I think he'll be better than him. But I think overall, I think Keon Coleman has a chance to be their number one for a while. I've seen some highlights of him catching balls over guys. I think it's just going to be more, can he separate from NFL speed? Because he could separate from college speed, but he's not exactly a burner. He's more of a jump ball type guy, which is fine because Josh Allen can put it in places for him to go get it. But it's just really tough to be a dynamic guy and just be mainly a jump ball guy. So he's got to extend his repertoire there and get a little better in other areas.
Yeah, I mean that is the question for sure. Is with Keon Coleman's separation, Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir is very interesting because, like you were talking about, Khalil Shakir looked pretty good out of the slot, but then they pay Curtis Samuel, who basically takes all of his snaps out of the slot. I think it's like 70%, something pretty high for NFL wide receivers. So I don't know who they think is going to go outside there, but and I assume with their personnel that they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel sets with two tight ends. So you can't play obviously four wide with two tight ends. So
I don't mean to
one of those
interrupt, but
guys is going
didn't
to lose some
Curtis
snaps.
Samuel, didn't he play two with the Redskins some?
He played with
Wasn't he
the
on the outside a little bit?
Redskins.
Or
He might have
I
been
guess
back then. He might have been back then. I don't know, but he
I could be
played.
wrong.
He came over. He can play outside. He played he played 30% of the snaps there last year, but I think he's definitely best out of the slot. That's what he did most. So I don't know. I don't think Shakir can play outside consistently at all. So maybe they think
Probably
Samuel
not.
can jump outside, but I do think Keon Coleman is also the wide receiver one for that room, though, if they're going to be super successful.
Yeah, I think Coleman's going to take a little time to get on, but I think he's going to end up being their one for the most of the year. But the most used, I mean, Gabe Davis got a lot of use in that offense in that slot a lot, and so they'll probably, I mean, Coleman will be their one as sense of like their outside, but I don't know if he puts up the fantasy numbers like Diggs did, near what Diggs did. I think they hit the slot a lot more this year until things start rolling later this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they use Kincaid and Knox a ton until they
Yeah.
kind of get their receiver room figured out more. So I
I was
think,
just
like
about to
you were
say that.
saying, that the wide receiver one isn't going to be like a dynamic fantasy wide receiver one like you would expect from a Josh Allen led team. We'll stick with wide receiver battles. The Ravens, I think their wide receiver room is super interesting as well when you're talking about fantasy because you got Bateman, you got Zay Flowers, who I think are the two that are really vying for that one spot. And Zay Flowers looks like he had it locked up last year, but I've seen a lot of stuff about Bateman coming out, and I thought it was pretty newsworthy to kind of talk about because everyone acts like Zay Flowers is solidified as the top 20 wide receiver, top 25 wide receiver in fantasy, and all the reports out of camp are, hey, Bateman is getting a large target percentage, and Bateman is doing this and that, and I haven't seen a whole lot on Zay Flowers, so I think that's kind of scary to think about, especially as talented as Bateman was before Flowers came on the scene, just due to the fact that Bateman couldn't stay on the field.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question with Bateman is can he stay healthy? I mean, he really hasn't been on the field a whole lot since he's been in the NFL. I think he's pretty dynamic, but Zay Flowers proved last year he can play the whole year. I think that's honestly where it'll come down to it. And I think I'm not saying I don't know. I guess I don't know who they'll start out. I would assume they'll probably give it to Zay since Zay had the year he had last year. But they may start out with Bateman and see how healthy he is, and if he keeps going, he'll stay there. But either way, those two are going to be pretty good. Zay Flowers last year was pretty dynamic at times. He kind of had those games where he didn't really score much, but then he would blow up in other games. So he was a really good flex option to have week in and week out.
Yeah, I think if Bateman stays on the field, it's more of a one A and 1B. I mean, I feel those guys are kind of comparable. I think Flowers right now has the upper hand just because he's been healthy and had a good season last year. But I think it's going to be a pretty intense battle all year, back and forth on those guys and who really takes the spot. I don't think Flowers is that much ahead of him, but I think right now just because of health and availability. He probably does until Bateman proves otherwise.
I did see where Isaiah. They said Isaiah likely is likely to take
Good
take
one.
a lot of snaps um, at wide receiver. So they want to use him in the passing game.
Yeah, kind of similar to what we just talked about with Buffalo. A little bit of like just kind of you don't know where your receivers are going to be, so you just bring another tight end in. That's really good. They obviously still have Aguilar, and then they drafted the dude out of North Carolina, Devontae Walker. So there's going to be people competing for those spots, but I really don't think that any of those guys are going to make a difference as far as fantasy goes, at least not early on for Walker. But and then they have Malik Cunningham, which is just kind of fun. They brought him in and moved him to wide receiver. I don't know if he'll ever do anything, but those guys are always just wild cards when you swap positions like that. So
Yeah.
that's just an interesting thing. It doesn't, like
Wide
I said,
receiver
that's
is just
probably
tough on Baltimore because they use their tight ends so much in the pass game.
yeah. I put this in for Hayden because I don't personally think it's much of a competition, but he seems to think that it could be. So the Bears wide receiver two, um, I think it's probably going to be Keenan Allen, but they just paid DJ Moore a crap ton of money. So I think DJ is pretty solidified as the one at this point in his career, at least for this year after they paid him that salary. So Hayden, do you still think that Rome Odunze can beat out Keenan Allen for that two spot this year for a fantasy value? Because obviously Keenan Allen's going to get the snaps and stuff like that. But
I don't know. I mean, I it's very tough. I guess I would just want to see how they perform in their first couple games because if Rome is out there catching everything he throws to him and they just develop that connection, I don't see how he doesn't move. Maybe not on the actual depth chart on the team, but like you said, fantasy value wise, maybe he moves into a two instead of a three. I just think they're gonna. I was just totally, and I don't know what information I'm going off of other than they're both young guys. I think they're going to connect. And as good as Rome was in college, I just think he's gonna get a lot of balls from Caleb. So I just think he's gonna be of wide receiver value too. But I could see Keenan Allen being of wide receiver value too. Also, it just depends on where at. Are they like? Are you saying like they're bottom tier two, or are they like top tier two? I would say Rome will probably be closer to bottom tier two, and Keenan Allen I don't know that I would say he's closer to top tier two, but I would say he's got a better chance at it than probably Rome does.
yeah, I mean, if Caleb's Patrick Mahomes, they can all three be wide receiver ones. Then they'll just throw the ball
There you
75
go.
times a game. But
That's it.
uh, yeah, like I said, I don't think that's actually much of a battle at this point. Maybe later in the season, if Rome really takes off, they can have some fun with that. But we
I
won't
mean,
spend too much time on that.
they're gonna have to put extra coverage towards somebody. Those wide receivers are way too good not to have extra coverage towards somebody. So somebody's gonna have a
Yeah,
little bit of one-on-one action.
well, that and then you get Komet in the middle, who's very solid, and Swift out of the backfield, who's very solid. So they're going to be a problem for
Hmm.
defenses if just Caleb Williams is good, let alone if he's elite or great or whatever word you want to use. Like if he can get into the top tier of quarterback play, then the Bears are going to be a real problem offensively. All right, one that's been talked about a lot. I'm going in alphabetical order here, so I'm just going to kind of jump around spot to spot. But the Bengals running back room, Zach Moss and Chase Brown battling it out. I forget which Bengal it was, but one of them said that Chase Brown is going to be special, and if he could play fantasy football, he would have him as his first running back taken. So that's pretty crazy praise from a player. I personally think that Zach Moss is the starting running back on the team, or that's what I thought. But you hear a player say that, and it definitely jumps out to you like, okay, maybe not. Like, that's probably not right if the player's coming out and saying that, because the coach has to have some kind of, sway in. If Zach Moss was the one that was running with the ones the whole time, the player's probably not going to say that about Chase Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I liked
just.
Zach
Oh,
Moss
go ahead,
last year.
Michael.
I liked Zach Moss a lot last year, and he played well when he stepped up and took that spot. But all the stuff you hear about Chase Brown this year, it makes you hard to have too much confidence in him winning that starting role. And Chase Brown showed some spurts last year when he got touches, and I liked what I saw from him. But Zach Moss was, I mean, there were weeks he was running back one, I believe, for fantasy value last year, and it's hard to see a guy like that just completely fading away. But I guess we'll see how it goes. I don't think it definitely won't be a 50-50 split backfield at all, but I'm sure both of them will work their way in at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just tough. Like what Luke said, when you hear things like that about Chase Brown, to know exactly what's going on. So, watching preseason and seeing what, whoever's in there, seeing what they do, and then how the first game goes of the season, you'll kind of probably get a grasp of what they're going to do. But I mean, I could kind of see it. I mean, I know he kind of. I mean, looking at Zach's stats, I mean, when did Jonathan Taylor come back? What week did he come back?
He came back in week 5, but he didn't really play heavy snap percentages till like 7 or 8, I want to say.
Okay. Well, I
Because
mean,
he,
his
he
stats
just
looked
sat out
really
his
good in
first
the
4.
first 4 weeks. So whenever Jonathan Taylor came back, I mean, he just kind of went to, I mean, not bad. Like some weeks he was averaging 3 yards, some 3 yards a carry, and then like others he'd average like 6. So I mean, it was just kind of hit or miss from then on out when it was a two running back room. It'll just depend on how much they decide to split with him. If they decide to split, I don't really love either one of these running backs for a lot of heavy value because I just feel like Zach shows that he's a lot better when he gets the ball in big time volume. And if he doesn't get big time volume, I don't know if he's going to be a huge value.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I like Chase Brown, to be honest, is he's really explosive. I don't think he can be a bell cow running back, but if you give him, for example, when we had Zeke and Tony Pollard, and everyone was like, "Oh, Tony Pollard needs more touches." More touches doesn't always mean better things for certain running backs, and I think if Zach Moss can kind of be the volume guy and Chase Brown can come in 10 touches a game and just kind of do what he does with it, I think that's probably the best case scenario for the Bengals. But what's weird about the Bengals is all they've had is Joe Mixon, and he's played like every snap. Not literally, but he's played a ton of percentage when he's healthy, one of the highest percentages in the league. So I don't know if Zach Taylor just likes having one running back and he's just going to run with that, or if that just happened to be because he thought Joe Mixon was significantly better. Um, so that'll definitely be one of the more interesting position battles for fantasy value because the starting running back is huge. So in your dynasty leagues, if you can, maybe someone really likes Chase Brown, use that news that, oh, Chase Brown looks special, go get Zach Moss really cheap and be like, well, I got a shot at it at least. It's hard to get even a shot at a starting running back. So that would probably be what I would do with that news because you hear preseason hype all the time that just never amounts to anything. And it's pretty easy for a running back to look really good in practices and pads that you're not really hitting. And that's probably where Chase Brown has one of the bigger issues is when he's getting hit all the time because he's just a smaller guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, another one that a lot of news has came out on is the Cowboys running back room. Apparently, Rico Dowdle looks phenomenal in preseason, and we have to take all of that into account and be like, okay, he's going to be the GOAT of running backs now. He looks so good. Jerry Jones told us, and then other people told us as well. But I still think Zeke probably leads that room in touches, but Rico Dowdle is apparently making an impact on some people.
Yeah, I don't buy a lot of that, honestly, if I'm being for real. Just because I feel like the Cowboys are the team that, out of anybody, would start a story just to make them look better. I know all teams do that, but I would take it from them. Like, I mean, I'm sure they do it just as much, if not a lot more. But like you said, I think Zeke will get a lot of touches. He did decent for the Patriots last year, but I don't. I mean, playing one of these guys will help your fantasy team, but I don't think their running back room is going to be a whole lot of help because I think they're going to be leaning so much on Dak and CD. It's going to be crazy. I mean, I would say Dak's going to average like probably 35 pass attempts a game.
Oh yeah, and that's why I picked up Nate Pete in Dynasty from Mizzou boy, shout out, because he's pretty good at catching the ball out of the backfield. And I don't feel like Zeke or Dowdle. Zeke at this point, at one point Zeke was a great receiver, but I feel like the explosion isn't there. So I took a dart throw. It's probably not even worth mentioning in a podcast. Like that's probably a waste of my breath. But that way, if it hits, I can be like, I told you guys to go pick up Nate Pete, but I'm not actually telling you to do that. Don't do that because
I
it's
don't even
wasting
see
good
him on their
points.
depth chart right now.
Yeah, he was an undrafted free agent, and he might have already got cut. So then I will probably just, forfeit my podcast license and go hang him up.
I just had to do that to you. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, well, moving on from that disaster, we got the Broncos. The Broncos, I think, are one of the teams that we can learn the most about in preseason because they have position battles at every single skill position. Running back, they have McLaughlin, they have Williams, they have Estime, and they have Blake Watson. Um, of course, the news that comes out, kind of going with the Dowdle thing too, that I should have kind of mentioned is it's always the third and the fourth guys or the backup guys that get the news coming out of camp because no one cares about what the starter is doing. We want to see new people perform. So a lot of the news has been about Estime and Watson. And no one's really talking about McLaughlin or Estime, Watson, McLaughlin. There's too many running backs in that room, man. This is hard to even talk through all of them. No one's talking about P. Reiner Williams. They're probably going to be the two that are the most relevant, but uh, definitely should mention McLaughlin. Apparently, he's been shining in camp. Once again, who knows what that means, but who do you guys think is the best kind of pickup value that you can get out of those guys in Denver?
Micah, do you have yourself muted?
Sure do.
I couldn't tell
I
if we were
couldn't
having
tell
an
if we were
internet
having an
glitch.
internet glitch. I was muted. My bad. I was saying,
Oh my gosh.
McLaughlin. There were rumors last year McLaughlin was gonna take a role last year and never really emerged. And so I don't know if maybe he's just having another good year and they think he'll step up more. But last year there were rumors going around that he was going to have a role and take some snaps away, and he really never really came out and ever did much.
McLaughlin
Yeah.
was pretty good for a while there, Micah. I don't know what you want
He
from a
did.
backup running back.
He
He
did
didn't
pretty
do.
decent, I thought, at times, but he didn't
They
just
But he didn't.
wow.
they
He
acted
did.
like he was going to step in and take the starting role, and he never
Yeah,
really.
he didn't do much until Williams got hurt. So he didn't beat out Williams, but uh,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. He didn't show that he was
Hmm.
elite by any means. I just had to give you
Yeah,
some crap after you had the muted mic.
that's
That's
fair.
fair. Um, I don't know. As far as the
Twinsies.
running back room goes, um, picking somebody who you could pick up that would be a good, better value, it would probably be McLaughlin for me, just because he did step in when Devontae Williams was hurt, and Devontae is likely to get hurt again. I mean, he's been hurt most of his career. Um, you could just kind of handcuff McLaughlin. He runs pretty good in the pass game sometimes. Other times he just doesn't get used as much as I think he is good in the pass game. But I think that could be good for a rookie QB. Honestly, P Ryan might be a good pickup because for Bo Nix, if he needs to dump it off, say third down a lot, if they're struggling to move the ball, you could see a lot of dump downs, a lot of screens to P Ryan. So,
Yeah, I think one thing too when you're talking about this stuff is like the Broncos are not going to hold 5 running backs, and this is where dynasty football can be kind of managed a little bit. Is Watson, Estime, or McLaughlin? Like one of those guys is probably going to get cut, and so that's when they might have the most value to you is to go in and be like, which guy didn't quite make this roster that's loaded at running back? Okay, let's say McLaughlin gets cut, which he's probably not the one that will, but just for example, and gets picked up by Kansas City. Well, then all of a sudden you have a huge value. So, like watching when those people get cut and the deadline stuff, that's really important in dynasty fantasy football. Um, the more fun position battle that they have, we'll save for last. So we'll talk about their receivers real quick. Right now they have Cortland Sutton pretty easily secured as their wide receiver one. Marvin Mims is really the one that's kind of challenging that wide receiver 2 spot and making it a little interesting there in Denver. So stepping in for Jerry Judy. There's not much of a battle, I don't think. I think it's just Mims at that 2 spot, but definitely worth mentioning. He's a name that's going to be picked up in most of your big leagues, but just kind of pay attention to that. And if you see some sparks, maybe go offer a lesser trade for someone that's not paying attention in your league. Yeah, that's not a battle, so we don't have to talk about it. QB battle, though, that is a battle. There's 3 people in the race right now. It's been said that everyone has a chance to start week 1 of those 3 guys. So they have Stidham, Wilson, and Bo Nix right now battling it out. I think Stidham is getting the nod in the first game, and then Zach Wilson's the 2, and Bo Nix is the 3. So he's kind of behind the 8 ball. They usually do this with rookies that aren't like the solidified starters. They make them earn the spot, or even if they are the solidified starter, like when Trevor Lawrence wasn't announced as the starter until like right before week 1 of preseason. It's like we all knew that for 3 months, but cool. That was Urban Meyer, so I guess that one shouldn't count against the NFL because he just did everything completely different because he thought he was better than everybody else. Excuse you.
Sorry. Fine, I'll mute my mic.
Micah, you're muted. I can't hear you. But who do you guys think comes out of that QB battle in the lead after the end of the preseason?
Boy, that's tough. I honestly think they're going to probably go with Stidham for at least 1 or 2 games. I mean, maybe even 3 or 4, just because I think since Bo wasn't just like the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick, and since Jarrett has been there and he's shown that he can, take charge of that offense a little bit under Sean Payton, I think that he'll play the first few games, um, full well knowing that Bo Nix is going to take over at some point.
I think it depends on where you think Bo Nix is at in his development. I mean, if you think him getting snaps is more important, or if you think him sitting a while and watching and just learning is better for him. It really depends where you think what you think is better for his development. That isn't always what happens. But if you think reps is more important to him, then I think Bo Nix gets out there. But if you think he has a ways before he can get out there and those reps are even relevant reps, Stidham's going to take the first couple of weeks until you're ready for him to start stepping up and getting snaps and developing more.
Yeah, as many games as Bo Nix played in college, if he's not ready right now, like you got to be terrified if you're the Broncos. So for that reason, I think that Bo Nix is the guy. I honestly think that Zach Wilson has a better chance of beating out Bo Nix just because he is the most talented person in the room. I know he's had his issues and he hasn't shown that he can be that guy yet in the NFL. But to me, Zach Wilson has a way better arm, way more talent than either of those other 2 guys in the room. So if you're not going to go with Bo Nix, why would you not just give the shot to the guy with the talent as opposed to Stidham? But Stidham's paid a lot of money. So that also factors in too because, the owner's like, we're paying this guy $10 million because you told me he could be a starter next year if Russ wasn't here. So why is he not playing? And I think it would be hard to justify that playing Wilson over him. Obviously, with Knicks, you could be like, well, this is our draft pick, and he's just an expensive backup. But that is definitely one to watch for sure. The Broncos play on Saturday, I believe, so they haven't had to say what their playing schedule is for the preseason game yet. I'm just gonna. We've talked for 40 minutes already, which is crazy. It does not feel like that. So I'm going to skip to the QBs because I think those are the most interesting ones for people to hear about and for us to talk about. So next QB that we're going to talk about is the Raiders. You have Aiden O'Connell versus Gardner Minshew. Man, what a great spot the AFC West is in after talking about these last two teams. But honestly, this one's hard because I think Minshew is a better QB. I just don't think Aiden O'Connell's good. But I think Minshew's like your handicap because he's got a ceiling that you already know. And so if you maybe think you can get a ceiling out of O'Connell, do you play O'Connell? Do you guys have any insight on who you think it should be or like fantasy ties or anything like that? I got O'Connell in a couple leagues because he was so cheap. So that, I kind of hope that. But
I got Minshew in a couple leagues just because I picked him up when I had, I think it's just maybe the league I had a lot of injuries in, and I think maybe the league I had, Richardson last year.
Richardson?
Yeah. So I had him as a backup, and so I think I have him in a couple leagues. I think he's just a safer option, like you said. You kind of know what you're getting already, but O'Connell definitely could have a higher ceiling and really take off. But it depends where you're sitting. If you think you can get by with a safe quarterback and make the playoffs this year, which I don't see likely, but O'Connell definitely has a higher ceiling and can do a lot more.
Yeah,
Am
I
I? Am
agree.
I?
I think what, Micah?
I thought maybe I was muted again. You guys are just making fun of me.
No.
You took a while to respond.
But if you do that again, that is exactly what I will do. I will just wait there, and then I'll move on from you. But anyways, I think that they'll go with Gardner Minshew. Sadly, I think he's a way better quarterback, which I don't think he's a great quarterback. It's just, I think that's how bad Aiden O'Connell is. I would assume they probably saw that last year in a lot of their games. But I don't think it'll matter because I think at some point, I would imagine they'll both get some playing time because I think they're going to be really, really bad to the point where they may just be like, well, Gardner, you started, the first 9, 10 games, and we are 2-8 or 1-9. What's the problem with going to 8-0 at this point? So I don't think either one of them finishes out a full year starting, whether it's injuries or whether it's just how they're playing. But I definitely think the better one fantasy value would be Gardner Minshew. Even if Aiden O'Connell's playing, he had games last year where he beat the Chiefs and he only threw for like 130 or 40 yards, and it was all in the first half. I mean, there's literally hardly any value in a stat line like that.
Yeah, for fantasy, it's Minshew. Like you, 100% echo what Hayden said. I don't care if Aiden O'Connell starts. I don't want him on my team. Like, if you have to pick him up and play him because you're desperate in a super flex where you need a second QB because your guy's hurt or on bye or whatever, but it's not even worth rostering him in a point at this point in the season on a team that he could start on. So that's pretty bleak.
It's not great.
One thing I will say, and it's kind of out of left field, but they did get Carter Bradley out of South Alabama, who looked kind of good in the Senior Bowl. And I could see if you're the situation where you're talking about, where you play Gardner Minshew and you're out of the race completely, I could
Yeah.
almost see them taking a route like that as opposed to saying, because I just don't think O'Connell has a ceiling. Like, I think O'Connell is a solid backup. Like you said, he won a couple games last year playing very conservatively. and that's kind of something you really value in a backup QB. But yeah, I think things are pretty bleak out there in Oakland or Las Vegas, wherever they're at now. They're not even worth me remembering where they play. But I can't wait for
No, I
my
like that.
stepdad
I
and
like that
brothers to
idea.
listen to this episode. But
That's fair.
yeah, already talked about the Patriots QB. I have a list here, and I'm gonna run this by you. I didn't prep you guys for this at all, so congrats. This will just be off the dome for you guys. I have a list of 4 QBs that I think could be in a quarterback battle mid-season. So right now, they're safe, but these are guys that I think could end up being benched, and you guys tell me crazy or not crazy. That's the game. Just made it right now. I didn't know what I was going to do with this. We're going completely off the cuff here, which is
Sounds
a
good.
bad idea for us because that's usually how we get off topic. But here we are. Okay, this is my draft crush, so that factors in heavily. But I got the New Orleans Saints. I got Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler. So I think if the Saints are struggling to win games this year, you could see Spencer Rattler get in midseason. Crazy or not crazy?
That's a tough one.
I'm starting to an
Um,
absolute tough one. Micah, you want to go first? You want me to go first? Because I'm honestly
uh,
still thinking.
I'm
I'll
probably gonna
go.
go.
Here,
Go
I
ahead.
think I would go not crazy. Just because I think that Derek Carr played so bad at times last year, I think that's very likely to happen again. The only reason that it's so tough for me is because they paid Derek Carr so much money to just say, hey, you're healthy, let's bench you. But there is some upside with Spencer Rattler. I mean, he's got a lot of talent, but he was kind of good in college, but he wasn't like spectacular. So I just don't know if I see it lasting, even if it does happen.
Yeah, I don't know
I
either. I don't know if it lasts, but
I'm gonna go crazy. Oh, I just I don't know. It's tough. I just unless he just Rattler just shows absolute crazy potential in practice, I think they stick with Derek Carr. And I just don't see that happening right off the bat. I think Derek Carr will probably play the whole season pretty easily, even if they're not in the race. I don't see him not, especially with how much he's paid. Um, Barring injury, I think he probably plays the whole season.
Did they get a new offensive coordinator or no?
they did. He was the scapegoat last year.
So, I
Um,
want to say,
I think it could look a little like the Russell Wilson thing. That's kind of my thought process. Is you guys were talking about the money, and I think it could come down to like if I don't know his injury guarantees, but usually most players have them. So they're like week 10, they're like this guy's not doing anything. If he gets hurt, we got to pay him $50 million next year. Let's just play the rookie and see what we have. It's a little crazy though. Like it's definitely right in the middle.
it's,
I
yeah,
did start you guys with a tough one, but
yeah.
this one's a little easier. I think I got Seattle, where if Geno Smith struggles, that Sam Howell comes in.
I'm gonna say not crazy on that, and I feel a lot better about that one because um, I thought Geno Smith struggled a lot last year compared to that first year that he was there. Whenever he basically won his contract that he signed. Um, I do think he could bounce back a little bit, but Sam Howell showed that he could throw the ball a little bit. I mean, the Commanders were a struggling team last year, and at times Sam Howell had them in games that I didn't think they should be in. I mean, the Eagles did struggle towards the end of the year, but at the time when they played them, and they did have a horrible secondary, so that doesn't really help. But they were still a pretty good team at that time, and he almost beat them. So I mean, I think Sam Howell has some talent. It just depends on with the coach, I think.
I'm gonna say not crazy, just because Sam House showed he could throw the ball last year, and Seahawks have a solid wide receiver room. I mean, you got DK
Okay,
Lockett,
is
you
Micah
got
frozen or am I frozen? What's going on?
JSN. Am I not?
I'm gonna say, did you hear me or no?
Yeah, he's cutting out, but we'll catch his audio. Just keep talking, Micah.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I was just talking about the wide
Yeah.
receiver room and the ability he got. I think Sam Howell could show up, and if they're not doing well, I think Gino's gonna be out pretty quickly.
Okay. I'm gonna go a little bit more in the layup realm. I think. I don't know. Maybe this one's kind of borderline. My last one is just brutal. So I'll give you a little bit of a normal one. I have Daniel Jones doesn't perform well, and Drew Lock comes in and takes over for the Giants.
Not crazy at all for me. Because I mean, honestly, that's how it's happened for Drew Lock. Pretty much in all of his spots, he's ended up coming in at some point, whether it's injury or because somebody struggled. I can't remember last year. Did he come in because Gino got hurt, or did he come in because Gino was struggling? I wanted to think it was because Gino was struggling.
It was really weird. So they came out and said Gino might be hurt, and then Gino suited up and was the backup. But they said it was because Gino was hurt, and then Drew Lock played well, so they played him another game, and then he played really
Yeah,
poorly. Kind of the whole Drew Lock's effect is like really good, and then all of a sudden really bad. But so
yeah.
it was kind of a mix, I think, to be honest.
So I'm gonna take it as that's kind of how Drew. I mean, that's how Drew's career has been. I mean, he kind of is a mid-season like, hey, I'm here, man. You might as well play me. I might be able to win you a game, and then who knows? Maybe I can go on a four-game win streak. I mean, I feel like that's what each team has hoped whenever they put him in there. They're like, he's got talent. Um, they're like, can this guy, show us something better than where he was the last team? So, I mean, if Daniel Jones struggles, I could definitely see it. And I could see him honestly playing decently well in New York.
Yeah, I'd say not crazy as well. I mean, if Daniel Jones looks as poor as he did in the past at times, you might as well try something different. I mean, try somebody young, and if he takes off, he takes off. If not, chalk it up to a loss and try to go get a quarterback or something like that. But I could see it easily Drew Lock stepping in there and at least seeing what he's got and seeing if he could pull them out of a rut they've been in last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, from Hard Knocks, it already looks like they don't really want Daniel Jones anyways. I mean, it looks like at least half the organization feels that way.
Yeah. One point, Micah. I had to think about this because I didn't know, but Daniel Jones is younger than Drew Lock, which does not feel right, but he is. So
Well, Drew
He's
was
been
with
in
the
the league.
Broncos for a little while.
yeah, I think when you don't see people play, it makes them feel younger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Okay, the last
And
one.
yeah.
I think this is probably like the craziest, but not necessarily the craziest. And it doesn't make sense, but it'll make sense in a second. My last one that I'm going to bring in front of you guys, and then we got to talk about one more that I missed. But Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson struggles, and Jameis Winston comes in and plays the rest of the season.
You want to go, Micah?
Um, no, you go. I'm trying to think. I've
So I'm gonna
my
say, I mean, man, I haven't really said crazy on any of them. The first one I probably would have leaned more crazy, but I said not crazy. But this one I'm more on the side of not crazy because of just how Deshaun Watson has kind of acted slash how his health has been. Honest, and I don't know if you want to factor in like if you're just completely factoring in if they're healthy
They're healthy.
or if you're
Yeah, because
taking.
otherwise none of these
Okay,
are crazy.
okay. I mean, if he's healthy, I'm gonna say, gosh, I'm gonna probably say crazy, just because I think they've got so much put into him. I think that if he's in if he's healthy and he's playing, I also think he's not playing poorly enough that you think, oh, Jameis Winston can do a better job of not turning the ball over or getting us more touchdowns. Like, I don't think that's a scenario that anybody looks at. Like, I think Jameis Winston's there purely on if Deshaun Watson is literally atrocious, like Aiden O'Connell atrocious, which I don't see that happening, or he gets hurt. So I think it's kind of crazy. I mean, I just think Jameis Winston's not the type of guy where people are still kind of holding on to hope there if he could maybe do it if a guy is struggling.
I'm gonna say crazy as well. I just I I don't see a scenario where you're like, okay, let's bring Jameis in to take over. I mean, if you're moving on from Watson, you probably are going to want to go get somebody just because they're. And
I mean,
I
also,
mean,
can you even go back to Watson if you take him out to put Jameis Winston in? I mean, I know you can, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, I heard him talking about, which this might be another one that you go into with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. They were basically like, it's a battle, but they were like, they would be almost 100% sure that Russell's probably going to get the start because it's way easier to go from Russ to Justin than it is to go from Justin to Russ.
Yeah, that was going to be the last one I brought up, that it wasn't going to be a part of the game because that is an actual battle that's going on right now. But okay, I'm going to defend myself here because I think the Cleveland one is super intertwined in a lot of different ways. So the first is the contract, obviously. It's so hard to bench Watson with what he's being paid. The other side of that is that roster is so good. Everything outside of quarterback is phenomenal. And so if you are struggling at QB, it would be really hard to allow him to just continue to do that, knowing that you have a decent backup in Jameis Winston, who has won games, who came in for the Saints and went like 7-1 one year, um, and did take care of the football and did look good. And I think the locker room, if Deshaun Watson struggles, is going to be a very hard thing to manage. That you paid this guy all this money, and now we're in the fourth year, and he's still bad. So I just really could see it going both ways, knowing that you put so much stake in this guy, it would be so hard to move on. But you saw teams do it like the 49ers, the Broncos, where they had these guys where they had given up a lot for him, and they're like, you're not performing. We're going to go ahead and move on. So I think it's very unlikely with you guys, kind of what Hayden was saying. I don't think he'll be that bad if he's healthy. But if you're losing games because Watson's turning the ball over or doing something, it's going to be really hard to just keep playing him when the rest of your roster is that good. And you're kind of in a window of having that elite roster. You can only have those for so long. So
I mean, I think
that is,
they probably would have wrote him out last year if he wouldn't have uh, had his shoulder issue.
oh, they would have. And I think it would be a lot easier almost for them if he would have struggled the rest of the year last year healthy, because then they could just be like, okay, we're going to move on, move on. But
Yeah,
because he was hurt,
exactly.
now they're in that limbo again of was it just the injury because he played through it? I mean, a shoulder injury for a QB, that's detrimental. Like that'll make you play worse. I guarantee it. So
Another thing that helps him
that one's
there is the way Kevin Stefanski runs his offense. They run the ball a lot.
yeah, and all the passes are quick reads. I actually think that hurts Watson, if we're going to be very honest, because he played spread in college and then he played spread when he entered the NFL, and I think it's a whole different system. So a whole nother year with that system is probably helpful for him as well. I honestly think Deshaun Watson has somewhat of a bounce back year, but if he struggles early, I do think you could see Jameis come in because of how good the roster is, and they won't want to waste that time. All right. We'll close it on the QB battle that Hayden briefly mentioned, which is Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields. And I will admit, I have Justin Fields bias so strongly. I have him in so many leagues that affects my thought process. So I will let somebody else talk first, and then I will give the case on why Justin Fields should start over Russell Wilson. If either of you guys on the other side, hopefully somebody.
I think Russell's going to start. Do I think he should? as bad as he played last year? No, but I think he's going to start. I don't think he can be as bad as he was last year. Well, yeah, he can, but I don't think he will. I don't think he will be. Um, I think he'll have a little bit of a bounce back year, and I think he'll be manageable. But I think he'll start. But if he has a couple bad games and it starts off bad, I think they should pull the plug pretty quickly and just, I mean, go with Justin Fields and see what happens. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with my guy. I think Russ is going to start because, like I said, I think the easier way to do it for for the whole organization too is just Russ is way easier to pull and bench at some point during the season if he starts it out than I think it is to bench Justin Fields and go with Russ. Because then I think if you go with Justin Fields first and then he doesn't perform and you bench him for Russ, then it's kind of like, well, why would we go back to Fields because we just benched him for Russ? So I mean, like if you bench Russ for Fields, Fields could play the rest of the year no matter how he's doing, just because he's got more talent and he's younger, and everybody's kind of moved off Russ at this point. He's just kind of still lingering because of his contract and that he's not 40 yet. Um, but I think Justin's better. I really don't know which one of them is better consistently throwing the ball right now. Because I mean, at times Justin Fields is really good, but he's really god awful in the fourth quarter. He also can be very streaky at times, and I mean throughout the other games. But he does have some games where he wows you, but he just really struggles at the end of games.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times that you see him struggle at the end of the games was obvious passing situations for Chicago. And I think when you can scheme up Justin Fields, um, he's definitely better because I don't think Chicago really had the weapons last year, for one. Their line was decent, but not great. So I'm not like saying, oh, he didn't have. It's not the Daniel Jones thing. Like he had a decent system around him. I just don't think he had a good enough system around him to where you're like, hey, you're going to drop the ball. You're going to drop back 3 times this drive, and everyone knows it's coming. I don't think he had the skill set for that. And he also did things that were poor in those situations and got himself in more trouble than was needed. I think that where you're wrong on the Fields to Wilson thing, I think you can go Fields to Wilson to Fields. I don't think that's an issue because everyone in the building is going to be on board going back to Fields the second time because I think Fields is in a contract year, so he'll want to be on the field as much as he possibly can. If he can just get back out there, he'll do it. I think the problem is the first one, going from Fields to Wilson. I think if Wilson doesn't start, it's going to be hard to keep him checked in and be like, I'm sure when they signed him, there was some kind of, if not completely contractually agreed to, some kind of like feel in the building of like, you're going to be our starter. We're going to give you the shot to do it. I just think you are, I'm in the mind of Mike Tomlin right now. I've won 8 to 9 games with all of these average quarterbacks. I've done it my whole career ever since I've had Ben Roethlisberger. I have one QB in my room that at this point in their career can be special. That's Justin Fields. I think Russell Wilson can be I think he still has the capability to be an above average quarterback at his best. That's the ceiling. You know what you have athletically. He's not as good as he used to be. He's never really been a big arm pocket passer. You have Justin Fields who can do so many things spectacularly, like you guys were saying. If you can hone that in, you have a great QB. You have all the talent of a great QB. So if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm going to be like, this is my chance to finally have an elite guy. I'm going to ride with him through the year. And you probably have that loyalty thing with Fields of like, we went and got you at your lowest. Can you take a $35 million a year contract after you prove to us that you can be the starter for 3 years? Or, you have an ability to have a future quarterback on top of he might be the best quarterback in the room right now. Whereas even if Russell Wilson is the best quarterback, you have 1 to 2 years max of good Russell Wilson left. Like he's already on the decline. You saw that last year for sure, and 2 years ago. So to me, there's no ceiling of playing Russell Wilson, and you're in the AFC. Like you got to beat Patrick Mahomes. You got to beat Lamar Jackson. You got to beat Joe Burrow. You got to beat Josh Allen in the playoffs. I don't see Russell Wilson in that roster doing it. I do think it's possible with the ceiling of Justin Fields to beat those guys and that roster.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it. I don't know. I just if you go back and forth, I think it gets into that whole Zach Wilson thing, and then you're just like, there's no confidence there in either one of them. Which honestly, if you lose confidence in Russell Wilson at the beginning, nobody. I mean, it'll probably happen, but like he's kind of like just a one. Like he's a 1 year guy, anyways. There, I would imagine. I don't imagine they're gonna keep him to whatever point it is when they actually have to start paying him a lot of money. And then if you go back and forth between Justin Fields, I just feel like it's kind of like, well, what do you do? Do you sign him either? And maybe they don't want to sign either one of them after this year, depending on the kind of year they have. But I don't know. I could see it.
Oh, I think if you go Fields to Wilson to Fields, like you talked about, like Fields struggles and then comes back in, I don't think that is a situation where Fields is probably coming back to Pittsburgh. He probably didn't play well enough to earn that. My point was just like if Fields plays bad enough that he gets benched, he'll want to get as much new film on, so he'll agree to come back in and play, so that a different team will come get him and sign him as a backup or something. But I think the problem there is Russell Wilson would not agree to be the backup and then just be like a team player and be like, okay. And I wouldn't necessarily blame him for that. Like, you're 35 years old. I don't want to come here and sit behind somebody, but
Also, let's be for real. Tomlin's mindset is how good can I be in TV next year? Because he's for sure probably gone after this year, in my opinion.
I don't. I think he kind of has one of those like legacy contracts where I think he'll be there as long as he wants to be there.
But
But
I think he just wants to leave, honestly. If I was him, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you like, but boy, it's been a struggle for like the last 6 years.
well, it's been finding a quarterback, man. The rest of their roster has been good. He's a good coach as far as players and teams and getting them all together. But I don't know. They don't have a lot of weapons either in the passing game, which also leads me to pick Fields because they have George Pickens. And then they have right now. I'm looking on
But what if
our
they get
lads, which is
Ayuk?
what I use. If Ayuk goes there, I would actually play Wilson first. That really does change the conversation. But right now, their two receivers, Van Jefferson. So I need
Come
some kind of
on,
explosiveness somewhere.
that's good. Kind of.
And then Roman Wilson is their three, which we don't really know about him. So he could be.
Yeah,
I mean, he's listed as their slot receiver, so he could be their two technically, but I don't know. I will die on the hill that Field should play, and we'll learn soon. Preseason, I would assume both of them get snaps since they're battling, and we'll kind of see what happens there. So football
all I
finally
will say,
starts.
oh, sorry, and all I will say is, I think after this year we'll know whether Justin Fields is able to do anything or not. I think this is his last opportunity to show any opportunity of being able to be a starter.
See, I don't. I would have agreed with you until Sam Darnold this year, which was kind of like a different thing that's really never happened. Where Sam Darnold went somewhere and was a backup for a year, and then they were like, "Well, we need a starter, so let's go sign Sam Darnold." I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what teams do with QBs.
Yeah.
I could definitely like super hot take, long term hot take. I could see Fields going to San Francisco when Purdy's contract runs out, and they got to either pay him or go do something different. I could see them going to get somebody like Fields or something like that.
You think? I don't know. They didn't really like Lance, and Lance was closer to Fields. I mean, I'm not. Lance was not great, but like his style of football was kind of what Fields is. I don't know if they really liked that or not. Maybe they
I don't
just didn't
know if
like
they
it because
didn't.
Lance was bad.
That's. I mean, yeah, that was kind of what I was going to say. Is I
I
don't know
mean,
if they didn't like the style of play or they just didn't like him because he didn't play very good. But they
but I mean,
obviously
his
wanted that
guys have
style of
been
play at
more
one point.
pocket passers.
Yeah, but they obviously wanted a non-pocket passer. They traded up 17 picks to get to Trey Lance.
That is true. That is
I
true.
don't know. I highly doubt that actually happens, but like I said, I just like to say things on here that if they come true, I can go back and be like, I said that, and then when they don't, I'll be like, well, obviously it was a super hot take. I said that ahead of time. It doesn't have to come true.
Well, you say a lot of things, so eventually something's
That's
going to come true.
That's fair. If you make every take out there, then eventually a couple of them will hit.
I got
Just-
Trey Lance coming in for an injured Dak Prescott week 1 and winning the MVP.
Whoa. What are the odds on that? Can I bet that? Can I lay
Boy.
$1 down? Because that would
Trey
probably win me
Lance.
like $2 million.
About to be a
Trey
millionaire.
Trey Lance's MVP odds have got to be outrageous.
I don't even know. I'm going to look him up after we're done and see if I can find them. I
I
guarantee
don't
they're
even
not
think
listed.
you could
but-
even find odds for him, probably. Do they even make odds that far back?
I don't think so. I'm sure you can find somebody that would give you the odds. Just call up Vegas. They'll.
Call Vegas Sports, but see what they say. They're like, why the heck do you want to know that?
Sure, we'll take $1.
I looked up Trey Lance odds. You cannot place any single bets on Trey Lance for anything.
Not even.
I can't
Not
even bet
a
him to
bet
go
for
like over.
him to throw like a one pass.
No, there's nothing. There's 0 things available on DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, or BetRivers. So it's
I
not
wonder
looking
if
good
he-
for me to place this bet.
I wonder if he did become the starter at some point, just because of freak injury, what his odds would go to. Because surely with him being a starter, he would have odds at some point. Or I don't know, maybe not.
I don't know, but if Dak gets hurt week 1, I put on the record that I will make an MVP Trey Lance bet. I will find a way to do it. I
Yeah,
hope that
and then
doesn't
I
hurt.
would
I don't
also-
want people to get hurt.
I will also be fading the Cowboys in every single game the rest of the year.
Yeah, maybe the way to actually place that bet is to just bet the Cowboys under. Because there you go. If Dak gets hurt week 1, under is probably pretty safe. Okay, well, see, tangent time. I go into random stuff, so
I like
whatever.
tangents.
But that was a fun episode, boys. I'm glad we got back into it. We'll probably be a little more active consistently, talking bets and stuff like that, because now we can actually bet on games. Games start Thursday. So we have some preseason. We'll start doing like some little segments on bets for the regular season. Probably won't use those in the preseason because I don't want to put my record on the line for preseason games and I don't know who's playing. So
That's fair.
we'll have a friendly competition between the 3 of us though of who can win the most
Deal.
bets throughout the year.
For sure, Micah.
I'm betting money that Micah wins the betting pool.
I don't place enough.
God, that's when you know we have a problem if we bet on that.
I bet
All
that
right.
Micah's hit them up.
On that note, if you just want to throw your money in the trash, just send it to me anyways. Okay. That is all
Sorry,
we
maybe
have
we
for
can-
today. Oh, never
We can
mind.
link our Venmos
Hayden's
at
got
the end
more.
of this video and see if people want to throw us some money for our bets. They want to fund our
That
betting.
dog, that would be elite. Oh my gosh. I'd start doing OnlyFans if somebody would send me some betting money.
There we go. Hey, if you watch this video all the way to the end, throw us $1. That's all I'm saying. I can win money from the
I'll send
dollar. Doesn't have to be a lot.
Hayden's
And
gonna
if the
have
dollar's
30
not on the side, I'm sending it back.
Hayden's gonna have a 32 part parlay with that $1.
Oh, I'm parlaying every winner that week.
Boy.
Probably still only
If it
win
hits-
like $200.
If you parlayed every NFL game, I guarantee it's worth more than $200.
But placing $1, I guess it'd probably
Yeah.
be like 10,000 or something. Be crazy though if you actually put real money
Yeah.
on it though, instead of $1.
I'm gonna put a hundy down first week, 16 games. We'll figure it out. I'm not doing that.
Let's do it.
Don't actually hold me to that. Okay. If I wasn't living on a teacher's salary, I might consider it. All right.
2 people.
That is official. Yeah, 2 people on that. That is officially all we have for today before we get into some other little random thing. that no one's going to probably listen to this far, because if they listen to all these conversations so far, I'll actually Venmo you $1 if you get to this point in the show and tell me about all the conversations before. But
I mean, you had to
that's
listen
all
to
we got for
them
today.
talk. They listen
Yeah,
to you
no
talk.
kidding.
You owe more than $1.
I'll give them $1.01. How about that?
Deal.
All right. Adios, boys.
See ya.
Bye. See y'all next week.